Action.
Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the vlog. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Unit. Stick with us a couple of seconds, and we will talk a little bit about that Nightline episode. And we're back.
And we're back. So, let's go over today's agenda. Ta-da! Today we'll have a presentation about the Nightline episode, followed by Q&A. Now your Q&A can be specifically about that or any questions you'd like to ask. Moderators. So, let's see. Have we got any moderators for today? We're not getting notifications again. So
Oh, no.
We're gonna have to rely on everybody to help share this video and get it out there, because we're not getting our notifications out.
Okay, well, let's go ahead.
And so, moderators. Au revoir, is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there we go. That's us today. It's called Au revoir, Forrest. Okay.
Oh, you got another desktop. I want to get you back in the desktop.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't think anybody's out here yet anyway. But, let's see. 7 are watching, so that's good. You're watching us flounder just a little bit here. All right. Man in the Barn is here.
Yeah, okay.
Jimmy,
and Jimmy
Fast is here. All right. And saying thank you for posting the Nightline show. Yes.
Oh, our pleasure. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead with your intro. Again.
Okay, so we have our moderators. Now, Super Chat. Super Chat is available, and since it's Toby's birthday, we're hoping that you guys want to share a little love with Toby for his birthday and give us a Super Chat cha-ching just by clicking on the icon that looks like a grayed out $ at the bottom of the screen. Is that right?
Yes,
right
there's a
place?
little $ right next to the smiley face, and if you press that, it'll open up the Super Chat window, and you can decide upon the value of your donation.
That's
Now,
right.
the advantage is that it moves your question right to the top of the queue, and today we have a very short program because Shelley has an interview coming over at 2 o'clock, so we're going to have to close up about at least around 5 of 2 our time. So if you want your question, if you want your question asked or answered, make sure you get it at the top of the queue. Jimmy, we can go ahead and block Tau Lime. Doesn't look like he's going to be constructive. So,
Yeah. All right. So, and the open Q&A, as we said, will be a little bit shorter today. And because it's Toby's birthday, do you want to go ahead and open your gift?
is that my gift?
That's your gift.
Is that my birthday present?
That's your birthday
Well,
present.
it doesn't require much opening. Shall I open the
It's-
card?
Yeah, you don't have to read it, but you can open
Okay, I'll save that for later.
it. Nobody's interested in that. This is for our big trip to Denver. Make it more comfortable for you.
A steering wheel cover. Oh, very nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could use that.
that's right.
Comfortable driving. Thank you. That's a very
Yay.
nice birthday present. Thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
Thanks. Good to have another one.
Yeah.
I will be 69 years old tomorrow.
That's right.
So I was born in 1949, and tomorrow's my 69th birthday. And honestly, I didn't think I was going to make it this far, but I'm very happy that I did. So
Yay. As are we.
yeah. All right, let's go ahead here. So what I want to talk about today are several things relating to the Nightline episode that appeared last week and that we have documented on our channel. So if you want to see that episode, it's about 8 minutes long without the intros and outros. It had some information that was helpful, but as you'll see when you watch the video, I'm not sure that there's anything there that's truly helpful, except maybe a small hint. So what I'm going to talk about is, I had a question about when the footage was shot, so I'm going to address that because there seems to be, on my part, some confusion about when it was shot. What's ended up on the cutting room floor, and what are the chances that we're ever going to see that again? We're going to talk a little bit about Grizzly Bears, because Grizzly Bears came up in the conversation. We're going to talk about what I think is maybe Fenn's final hint. And yep, the end is nigh, in my humble opinion. So, when was the footage shot? So the first thing that you'll notice in the episode that there's some footage that was borrowed from The Lure, the film that our friend Thomas Leach produced and recently released to the public. And of course, it was used with permission. Dale and Cynthia were shot in the West Yellowstone or Yellowstone area in mid-September. Fenn was supposed to have been interviewed on or about October 14th, and I think that Dale still had that opinion that that's when it actually happened. In a conversation, somehow or the other, that date was missed. In a conversation with Fenn regarding the event at Collected Works on November 2nd, he mentioned to me that Nightline was going to be there the morning of at his place the morning of November 2nd, but apparently that was missed as well. Now, there was a production team, a shooting team, at the Nightline event. I'm sorry, from Nightline at the Collected Works event. As a matter of fact, they stood right next to me. They set up right next to our tripod. They were there. They shot some material. That it doesn't look like any of that material ended up in the Nightline episode. Then Fenn was finally interviewed on or about November 14th.
And he went to all the trouble to wear the same clothes, the same purple sweater and everything.
The purple sweater, the jeans, he did change the shirt.
Oh,
The shirt, the collar, you could tell the shirt between the one he wore on November 2nd, which had kind of a paisley pattern to it, and the one he wore for the interview had a small check pattern to it. Okay. So it was a different outfit, except for the jeans and the purple sweater.
Okay.
And so there were some questions about why he's wearing purple. If my guess is, here's my assumption, that it doesn't have anything to do with anything, that at some point he was either gifted a purple sweater or was wearing a purple sweater, and some pretty lady told him that he really looks good in purple, and that it made him look royal, which is enough to get Fenn to continue to wear the purple sweater when he's got a public appearance. That's my opinion, just kind of knowing Fenn. And honestly, knowing men in general. Because if some pretty woman told me that I look good in my...
Or maybe his wife gave it to him.
Oh, maybe his wife gave it to him, yeah.
And you got to wear it a lot, right?
So that's what's going on with the purple. So then in an email exchange that I had with him around January 2nd, he mentioned that the Nightline folks had told him that they required some more footage. If that footage was shot, it didn't appear in the Nightline episode because there was no difference. There was no change in kind of the tone, the color, the shooting style, et cetera, et cetera. So that's when the footage was shot. So the question then arose, how much of that is going to end up on the cutting room floor? So I've done literally thousands of interviews, not necessarily with Fenn, but thousands of interviews in the work that I did. What?
Not necessarily with Fenn. Not at all with Fenn.
Not at all with Fenn. Yeah, we've never actually interviewed Fenn, have we? And Shelley's done several dozen of them with me over the time we've been partners. And I can tell you kind of the process is you go in, you've got about an hour to set up the various modes. The crew will consist of a minimum of 2 camera people, maybe a third in Fenn's case, an audio guy, a production assistant, a producer, and the host themselves. So the crews vary around 6 to 7. And Fenn has told us in a conversation that we have with him that he doesn't particularly like that they come in and rearrange his house and set up lights. And it's not one of his favorite things to happen, but he does it. Then what happens is everybody starts shooting. There's going to be a camera as they're doing the interview. There's going to be a camera on the host. There's going to be a camera on Fenn. There may or may not be a roving third camera getting 2-up shots, background shots, et cetera, et cetera. And then after that, they'll spend about a half hour collecting B-roll, and B-roll consists of kind of two things. One is your fill-in shots, which is things like, imagery of his bookshelf and his collections, et cetera, et cetera. And then the second kind of B-roll is conversations with Fenn outside the interview, and you saw a lot of that when they were in the vault and just outside the vault where they were having conversations. In total, you're going to end up with at least one and sometimes as many as 3 hours worth of footage from 3 different cameras on several different angles. So now you have to give that to an editor along with the script and say, this is the 8-minute episode. And that editor has to take all that and work out exactly where they're going to get that footage from. So figure at a minimum, there was 1 hour, more likely 3 hours worth of footage. You saw an 8-minute segment of which I'm going to say 5 or 6 minutes came out of all that shooting with Dale and with Fenn, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of that footage ended up, quote, on the cutting room floor. Now, because we're talking about digital material and not actual film, that hasn't happened for a long time. That ends up on a hard drive in what is referred to as the digital film archive for that particular production company. It is owned by the production company, and unless there is a reason for them to use it at some time in the future, no one will ever see it again. And what I mean by that, if there's a death, say, for example, on the hunt, and they need some of that footage, or if Fenn, God forbid, passes away, they'll need some of that footage. But other than that, it would take a court order to get anyone to see that additional footage that came out of there. They just don't have the resources necessary to continue meeting requests for additional footage. So the likelihood of them saying yes to somebody asking if that additional footage could be seen or processed and put into the public domain is, I would say, slim to none. Probability very, very low. So then let's talk about grizzly bears, because I think for the most part people believe that the grizzly bear thing is a clue. We do not believe it is. In part of his conversation that was on the video, Fenn says a number of things, talking about he was surprised that somebody would have lost their lives in regards to the search. And then he finishes it by saying, I mean, the grizzly bears alone are something to think about. And the implication, of course, is that you are in danger if you're in grizzly bear territory. Therefore, I hid the treasure in grizzly bear territory. That counters 2 other statements that were from that episode. One is in the written article, the Nightline, on the Nightline website, where it is written, aside from the poem, Fem has given let me take that start again. Aside from the poem, Fenn has given few clues as to the treasure's whereabouts, but, he says, the treasure isn't anywhere dangerous. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with grizzly bears, they're really dangerous. So the likelihood of Fenn putting it in some place where grizzly bears consider their territory, especially around springtime when they're coming out of hibernation and really hungry and will eat pretty much anything, especially if it's small and slow, like children. I don't think Fenn would have done that. In addition, in the video, so the first quote comes from the article. It was not exactly included in the video. In the video, they say, but Fenn says he didn't put it. It was a very nice drone shot when they say this. But he says he didn't put it anywhere dangerous. Still, there may be those that are taking too many risks to try and find it. And that could have very well come out of the conversation. That was the host that was saying that. But the implication is that he left with the impression that Fenn wouldn't have put the treasure someplace dangerous. And in addition to that, they used some footage from, I think, KOAT, which is an ABC affiliate, that when Paris Wallace lost his life, the last, not the last searcher, but over the summer when Paris Wallace lost his life in the Rio Grande, KOAT recorded a scene with New Mexico State Police Chief Pete Caceres on a telephone call with Fenn. and KOAT recorded Fenn saying, "I'm not going to give a clue to help people find the treasure. I'm going to give a clue to try and help them keep out of trouble." Grizzly Bears, I think that's the second of those two.
And it referred to what they were already showing in the show, which was that Dale and Cynthia were in the area where there could be grizzly bears. So that would be the one danger he could remark upon that was in the show.
Which to me is an indication of why this thing is so hard. Dale mentions that he's been on 65 searches. Cynthia mentions that she had been on 100. Now, most of those have been in and around northern New Mexico. But it struck me that Dale and Cynthia are two of the several people that Fenn most often communicates with. And honestly, if I watched them and watched that little segment, they could have just said, well, let's not give anything away here. But it strikes me they are nowhere, they are no more closer to finding the treasure after 165 recons than anybody else. So I think you all still have a chance. I think everybody still has the same and equal chance.
I think we do.
Yeah. So Fenn's final hint in the written article, as opposed to the video, it is written in the article, Nightline, he also hesitantly revealed. Oh, to Nightline, he also hesitantly revealed another hint. And what I've highlighted in red did not appear in the video. It's only in the article. People tend to overcomplicate. Try to simplify if you can. That's good advice. And the reason they wrote it hesitantly is because he had to, as you'll see in the video, he had to kind of cajole him in order to give him a clue. And that was his clue. And my sense is that may be the last hint. Very well may be the last hint that we get from Fenn, where he said, try to simplify. And honestly, I think that is very much in line with the last couple of our blog posts and our videos where we were saying, try to simplify, basically. Go back to the thrill of the chase, go back to the poem, ignore anything ignore anything he said after December of 2012, and go with what you have. So, what do you think?
Simplify.
Yeah, back to Occam's razor.
Isn't that one of those models? Simplify. Oh, simplify.
No, that's Semper Fi. That's the Marines. Semper Fidelis. Always faithful.
Okay.
Semper Fi.
Well, maybe it could be
We should
ours.
make that. Yeah. Semper Fi.
Simplify.
Simplify.
We'll be doing that all
The
week.
end is nigh. The reporter Fenn says, and this is in the video. It's not in the article, interestingly. Fenn says this may be his last TV interview. Fenn says, I just don't feel like I have anything to say anymore. And again, that's, we believe, very much in line with what we've been saying since around May. I think we got pretty much hardcore about it around June, where we kept saying this thing is he's finished with it. He knows that the treasure is probably not going to be found in his lifetime, and he would like to spend whatever remains of his life focused on family and friends. And we think he's done that, and this is just another one of those times where he kind of reinforces that. Could it be that somebody on TV comes and says to him again, oh, we need you for an interview? It could be, but because I think Fenn is always hard-pressed to say no to these kinds of things. But the likelihood...
He's approached a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we went there last year and talked with him in his home, and he said he still had people coming to him at least once a month or more.
For interviews and things like that. But again, I'm going to stick with our assumption of... our most recent assumption, and that is we're not going to get much more from him. And the caveat to that is, and we're not going to trust anything he said after December 2012. So, recommendations: don't put a high level. Just repeat what I just said. Don't put a high level of confidence in anything Fenn says after December of 2012. That's where we're at. That means we're going to stick with the thrill of the chase. We're going to enjoy the other stuff. We're going to stick with the thrill of the chase, and we're going to focus on the poem, and we're going to write about it and blog about it. We're going to search New Mexico. And next week, well, as you probably are aware by now, we're leaving tomorrow to go up to Denver.
Where'd you get this picture? They're doing construction over here.
off the interwebs. I didn't notice the construction.
Yeah. Okay. And then see the cones, the orange cones.
Yeah,
It's like,
and that's the side that faces the mountains. The other side is not as pretty. The parking lot side isn't as attractive. It's kind of blasé. It looks like a museum from the other side.
oh, I see.
This looks like National Air and Space in Washington.
Yeah,
I
it does.
thought.
Fancy.
Fancy. So we're headed up there for a week or so, just about a week. We'll be back in our show next Tuesday. We will be posting the occasional live stream from there, a little reportage while we're there. I will be, as usual, taking a lot of pictures, and we will post those pictures to our blog.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. So be on the lookout for quick little videos from Denver from this week, and we'll be talking about it more next week as well. So we did get a nice cha-ching from Alan K. Gave us $20 for your birthday.
Oh, thank you, Ellen. That's very kind. We will.
Thanks for being awesome and have fun in Denver.
Thanks. Thanks very much. If you have a question, make sure you ask so we can make sure that we get that answered. We have about 35 minutes for Q&A, so
All right.
I think we do have some time for it.
Yay.
For those of you that showed up late, Shelley gave me a birthday present. It looks like a bicycle inner tube, but it's actually a leather wheel cover, so that was very nice.
For his steering wheel.
Yeah.
Because your hands were cold last time.
Yeah, they
I was
were.
like, oh,
Yeah.
you
Did
could
I
use
complain?
it. Well, you just had cold hands.
Yeah.
Thank you for posting the Nightline show. Let's see. So we have Man in the Barn, Jimmy Fast, Edward Owen. Also says thanks for telling us about Nightline. Looking good for 69.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, for 69, that sounds doing pretty good. So ask Man in the Barn and Jimmy Fast if they got notifications. Did you guys get notifications, or did you show up just because we know we start at the same time every week? Because we're having trouble with YouTube sending out notifications when we go live.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping that everybody watches this, and for the most part, unless we say otherwise, we will have a program every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. So right now it's Mountain Standard Time. Come daylight savings, it will be Mountain Daylight Time.
If we could just get rid of that.
Pardon me?
If we could only just get rid of that. Daylight
I want to get rid of Mountain Standard Time.
I want my extra sleep.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Anyway, Kyle Lambert says, happy birthday, Toby. Have fun in Denver. Wish I could meet you guys, but I'm in the Springs and doubt you guys will make it this direction. Colorado Springs? We'll be driving right past there on I-25. Cindy Guest says, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Eric can't hear me. You want to check on my audio?
Talk to me.
Am I talking?
Talk to me.
Hello? Hello?
I
Hello?
can turn you up just a little bit. Try it again.
Okay. So we're turning me up. Hopefully that'll help. Chad Bird is here.
Oh, now you just peeked out when you did that. Okay. Do it.
Chad Bird is here.
Okay, there we go. Hey, Chad. How are you doing?
What's up, buddies? Did anyone ever check out Salida more? We went skiing in Red River. It looked promising, but haven't researched it at all yet. We drove into Taos to check out a movie. RR maybe. I don't know what RR.
Red River.
Red River. Oh, Red River. Because it was RR is Rio Rancho to me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, that's not in Rio Rancho.
Red River does have 2 locations where warm waters halt. So, including the confluence. One of them that we did some research on was a confluence of Goose Creek with Red River.
All right. Some people are saying volume's low. Some say it's normal. So, just
I'm always hesitant.
double checking our audio.
Talk to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See, that's the point at which I start peeking out when I get loud. So.
Okay.
Okay. Questions. We can go to Q&A. I'm done.
All right. Here's one. Hi, Toby and Shelley. Thank you for promoting healthy lifestyle hiking. Will Forrest visit the treasure site again? How often has he already visited the site?
No, he will not, and 0. Other than the time he claims that he has not been back to the site since he hid the treasure. Now, the question is when he hid the treasure, but there is no reason for a treasure, having hidden treasures of our own, there's no reason for you to return to the site once you've placed the treasure.
because that would be tipping people off who might be following you.
Yeah.
Eric Schmidt. So we shouldn't believe anything in Too Far to Walk?
In Too Far to Walk. Yes. Yes, you shouldn't believe anything you shouldn't believe anything after December 2012, especially in 2013, because that's when early 2013, that's when he discovered the Rocky Mountains, and that was the point at which he realized he was about to publish a second book, Too Far to Walk, that would have had the benchmark map in it. So yes, nothing after 2012. No Rocky Mountains.
Okay. We have Jimmy Fast says, no notifications. Edward Owen said, I got notification. Chad Bird said, they got to click the little bell to get notified. Remind everyone to subscribe and hit the bell. Be sure to do that. But unfortunately, YouTube has been a little bit late on the notifications for live videos over the past week or so.
Have they said anything about it this time? I know they were talking about it last week.
They haven't, but I didn't get a notification, and I've definitely subscribed and clicked the bell, so it's kind of hit or miss today. Let's see. Volume is great now. Good. So they like it better.
Okay.
Drew says, Forrest said to read the blogs for entertainment and the poem like you were going to put an X on a map. Any coincidence the only letter missing from the poem is an X? I think it's a coincidence.
I think it's a coincidence. Yes, there is it is a coincidence.
There aren't a whole lot of words with X in it. Chad says, happy birthday.
Thank you, Chad.
Why is Dale always way out in an area that is dangerous?
I wish I could answer that. I don't talk much with Dale. He's not a big fan of ours. But I've seen a lot of the videos that he's made regarding his searches, and my only concern, I'm not going to give Dale advice, but I'm going to give you some advice. If you don't know exactly where warm waters halt, followed by a canyon down, don't spend your money, because at that point, as you can see just by watching Dale and Cynthia, then it's just a big wander through the forest until you find something that looks like a blaze. And I can tell you, for the number of searches that we've been on, a bad search, that's how they go. You think you have warm waters halt, you think you have a canyon down, and then from that point, you're wandering out into the boonies until you find either a dead animal or a bunch of bones, and you start looking to remind yourself whether or not you brought your bear spray along. So honestly, that search that Nightline shot of Dale and Cynthia, who in my opinion are two of the most experienced searchers out there, and in my opinion are the closest to Fenn, looked pretty much like a couple of people who like the other videos you see of people who aren't inexperienced in the search. You know, we got a warm waters halt here at Madison Junction. Which I think almost everybody has, anybody who's been in the search has at least considered as a possibility. And then it's let's wander, let's poke around here. I don't think that's how this is supposed to go. I don't think that's the way Fenn decided to. I don't think there's going to be wandering around until you see something that you come to the conclusion must be the blaze. I don't think it happens that way. And I think that more than anything else was an example of how most searches for Fenn's treasure go.
So other than the fact that they've eliminated a few places, we're all on a level playing field here.
Yeah.
Nobody's ahead of anybody else in finding this treasure.
Fenn's told us several things. Begin at where warm waters halt is the first clue. Don't leave home if you don't know where warm waters halt are. And the person who finds the treasure is going to have gone there with a confidence knowing that they're going to find the treasure. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've solved all the clues, but our sense is that if you get to warm waters halt, you should be able to look around and say, oh, and there's the canyon down.
Okay, Josh Wally. Hey guys, love the show. Are there any references by Fenn of using GPS when hiding or after hiding the treasure?
No, there are not. He's never indicated any reference to that. That doesn't mean he didn't do it, but there's no reason for him to, unless the expectation was that he would have to go back and find it, because for anybody who spent any time in the outdoors, especially up there, it's damned easy to put something someplace and then just as hard to go back and find it. So he could have done that, but I think because there was no intent that he would ever return, there was no need for him to give a GPS location. I'm sure he has a general idea within probably 200 feet of where it is, but I don't think there is. I don't think he documented GPS coordinates. Fenn doesn't strike me as that kind of the guy. He's a seat of the pants kind of guy when he was flying, and in later lives. So I'd be surprised.
Okay, man in the barn. Do you think when Forrest Fenn said, "Where you find my bones, you will find the treasure," do you think he meant his bones that he dug up at the Pueblo and hiding from the feds?
No, I think he meant his bones as him laying down next to the treasure, finishing his life in however he thought was most appropriate for him, and then having his body return to dust, as it is said, and what would be left behind for a little bit longer are his bones. Now, eventually, even his bones would have returned to dust. We do not believe that that is still Fenn's intention. We think his dream, if you will, of dying next to the treasure is long past. I think he expects that he's going to die in his home, close to family and friends.
Right. I mean, the reason he even thought about it was because that's how his father had chosen to die when he had pancreatic cancer, and he knew he only had about a month left to live, and he was going to be in a lot of pain and going to be into hospice, and he didn't want that, so he took the sleeping pills and went on his own terms, basically. Fenn wanted to do the same thing if it was the same circumstances, but at this point, he has no idea, just like the rest of us, when he's going to die. Die in his sleep tomorrow, or he could live another 10, 15, 20 years. So he's not ready to just take some pills and die.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. Okay. Steve Rempel. You two make a great team. Love watching. Yay.
Thanks.
Personally, how reliable do you think the blogs are out there? Seems to me a lot of fluff, unrealistic opinions, and some nonsense. How do you separate?
I don't want to pick on the blogs. I can tell you that I don't spend a lot of time on the blogs. Usually I'll go to let them know that we're publishing something of interest, like the Nightline episode. But early in my search for the treasure, I spent time on them, and my conclusion was that it was not realistic for me to believe that I was getting information from them that was helpful. That does not mean that some people may not find it information. Certainly not any reason for anyone not to go to review the blogs. I can tell you that we don't spend any time there.
I find I've been on other forums. I'm sure you've been around and seen a lot of forums over the years as they've developed since the early to mid 90s and up through now. And they have a lot of similarities, all of them, no matter what the main topic is. You have, the certain archetypes of people who are there on the forums. And then you have the lurkers who just read and don't ever say anything. So I would take it all with a grain of salt, because that's just forums.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how quickly a topic that can be presented as serious can take a left turn within 3 or 4 following posts. And that's because not everyone has the same set of objectives on those forums. So, yeah, we don't rely on them for intelligence at all.
No, yeah, I wouldn't recommend you do. Okay, let's see. Edward Owen, this has been asked before, but do you think Forrest would have been able to take a hike 2 times with treasure about 3/4 mile with 30-degree incline at the age he said he was when he hit it?
I would say up until the 30-degree incline, which is a pretty steep incline, I think it is perfectly plausible that Fenn made, in the time allotted, 4 trips from his car to the place that he hid the treasure, if that place was within, let's say, half to 3/4 of a mile away from his car. At the outside of that, that would have been a total of 3 miles in an afternoon, plus the time that it took to hide the treasure. And because he already knew where it was, that really wouldn't have taken a lot of time. My guess is he spent more time with the treasure just considering what he had just done than he did actually hiding it. It doesn't sound like he worked a lot to hide it, that it's in a place where he thought was hidey enough. But I think the number of hypotheticals that you propose is just probably a bridge too far. I couldn't tell you. If it was a 30-degree angle, I know from my own experience at age 68, going up and down 30-degree angles is not something that you want to do all afternoon. As a matter of fact, when you do go up a 30-degree angle, and we have, your first reaction when you get back down is, boy, I'm glad we don't have to do that again. So,
Yeah.
Fen's a different. Now, the other thing too is Fen's a different breed of guy. He's a pretty healthy guy, and he had a mission. And your mission can accommodate, if you have a set of objectives and mission that you believe in, that can accommodate a lot of these things. But I think in your question, there's just too many hypotheticals to give you a quality answer or a yes/no answer.
All right. Ina Yarm, does Fenn's idea have some form of patent, or can it be implemented in other countries?
Fenn's idea. I'm not sure if you mean. So first of all, I'm not sure what you're suggesting. If by his idea you mean placing a treasure and writing a book about it, anyone is free to do that. You can't copyright. You can't trademark.
Other people have done that.
You can't trademark a concept, and this is simply a concept. Now, if you were to start, copying the treasure and copying words from the book and using his poem, then you have a different problem because that material is copyrighted. But you can't trademark a concept like that. So anybody could do it, whether it's in this country or any other country for that matter.
Jazz Winters. It almost seems in his last clue statement on Nightline, simplify the poem. It's like something obvious none of us is seeing in the poem.
He didn't exactly, the word poem was not included in that quote. Let's see if I can go back to it. I have it exactly the way he said it. Oh. What he said is, and this was in the video, try to simplify if you can. That's good advice. So I think you can interpret that to mean try to simplify how your interpretation of the poem is going. Try to simplify what you're doing as opposed to making it complex. And again, I think that's very much in line with what we recommended last week, which boils down to Occam's razor, keep it simple. Entities should not be multiplied beyond their necessity. So I think that was good advice, and I think it's another one of those hints, if you will, that Fenn has given. And if you look at the video and the way he said it, he thought about it for a moment, and then afterwards he said something like, "I've given you too much information." The reporter asks, "Anything else?" And Fenn says, "I've given you too much information already." The manner in which he said that one phrase was what he impressed me so much. Usually Fenn will say something. There's a scene earlier in that program where they talk about the 200-foot treasure hunters being within 200 feet of the treasure, not knowing they were there. And the reporter, the journalist, says something like 200 feet. That's pretty close. And Fenn, with that mischievous leprechaun-like look of his, says, "Not close enough." And you can tell that was playful Fenn. When Fenn said this line, try to simplify it if you can, that's good advice. He wasn't being playful. That was as serious as I have ever seen Fenn in any interview. And that's why I give that particular quote the credence that I do. Go back and take a look at the video. It's on our channel.
And he says, what about the fancy font? Like the J's look like F's in the poem. What do you think of that?
Well, the only place I've seen it, of course, is in the book. If you're talking about the poem that was written in that's included in the map and poster that was published by Benchmark, that was a designer at Benchmark who made that decision to give it that old-timey look using a calligraphic font.
Let's see. T.I. Mattis. I love this vlog. I don't comment much, but I'm always nodding my head in agreement.
She's Cindy's sister.
Oh.
They don't live in the same place, but they are sisters.
It's unnerving sometimes. Get out of my head, Toby. Seriously,
Who?
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you, T.I.
Let's see. Kyle Lambert. I recall reading somewhere that Fenn was sort of a rule breaker. I haven't got his book yet, but would you guys say that jives with the Fenn you've met? A rule breaker. I think he's mischievous,
Yeah.
and I think he might stretch the boundaries, but I don't think he's a lawbreaker or somebody who appreciates other lawbreakers. Unless it's something he doesn't really agree with now.
I would call Fenn someplace between a Trump conservative and a libertarian, a Rand Paul libertarian. I think he's one of those guys that believes in freedom of the individual, and I think he practices that to some extent. But honestly, you can't have spent 20 years in the Air Force as a fighter pilot and be a complete free thinker. That just doesn't, those two things are diametrically opposed. That a fighter pilot, to make it and sustain yourself as a fighter pilot requires a certain amount of rigor in which you have to give up some individual rights and thoughts. So you have to play that against the time before having spent time in the Air Force. I think one of the things that you also have to consider is Fenn, more than anything else, is pragmatic. So even prior to the age of 20, where he gives you the impression he was a free spirit, somebody said, would you like to go in the Air Force? Or he decided to go in the Air Force, and he said, okay. And then later on, somebody said, hey, we need pilots, because he was an enlisted man at the time, not an officer. So he knew he was going to have to go through a certain amount of training, officer's candidate school, and then fighter pilot training before he could do that. You make that decision, and you go with it, and you're successful at it, including a year in combat. You made a decision to be less of a libertarian and a free spirit. So, and that's the pragmatism of Fenn, saying, what is it that I can get out of the Air Force? If I have to give back, what I'm giving up is some of my freedom and independence. And I think he did that. He traveled all over the world. He had a good time. He got these wonderful stories. For anyone that's been in combat, you believe after you have survived it, well, that was pretty exciting. I'm not going to do anything that exciting anymore. And then everything after that pretty much becomes easy. There are no hard things in front of you after you've done that. And so Fenn, I think, as Shelley said, is a free spirit, but is willing at the same time to pragmatically consider what he has to give up of his free-spiritedness in order to get what he wants. You can be a free spirit, but you can't build a gallery that's worth millions of dollars and funds your retirement and your family's wealth and security and be a completely free spirit. There has to be some pragmatism in there someplace.
Well, and I think in the generation he was brought up in and the family he was brought up in, to be a good citizen. And that means that you respect other people and you respect the boundaries. You know, you're not going to do something that's going to hurt other people, basically.
Exactly.
So if you can stretch rules and you're not hurting anybody, that's different than,
Right.
you know, tromping around on somebody's private property or Indian reservation.
Exactly.
Yeah. All righty. Let's see. AGK from Steve Rempel. Do you think it's possible Forrest's clue of 200 feet is in elevation? He wouldn't be misleading a searcher if they were 500 away but 200 feet in elevation. What do you think?
So there's a couple of things about the 200, I call it the 200-foot rule. Number one, that was one of those things that came out after December 2012. It came out around the beginning of 2013. So that's the first thing, when it came out after 2012. That, you know, searchers have told me where they've been, and some of them have been within 200 feet, but they went right past it. But there was a lot of buts associated with it. But they went right past it, or but they didn't know they were that close, et cetera, et cetera. The second thing that occurs to me whenever I hear that is it's never changed. You'd think that if you had said that searchers have been within 200 feet, I would go back over every search I had done prior to that time and start looking again at exactly what I had done, measuring out using a compass, the 200 feet, a mathematical compass, the 200 feet, and gone back. But it's never changed. It's the same thing. And he says it always in the same way. And when you hear somebody say the same thing in the same way, in that rehearsed way, that's a pretty good indication that it's a figment of their imagination in a way. I'm not certain that searchers have been within 200 feet. And the reason is it's said too often, it's said exactly the same way. And there's a point at which, beginning in when it was said in 2013, I believe that everything was marketing. And to me, it's pretty good at marketing to say, you know what, people have been within 200 feet. That creates a lot of hope.
All right, we have about 5 or 6 more before we have to close down.
Yeah, we got about 10 minutes here.
So you're going to have to shorten these up.
Oh, okay.
All right. Toby, do you know anything about Project Stargate, which operated on the findings of Stanford Research Institute with remote viewing? Can this tool be used to help find the treasure?
Yes,
no?
if you believe deeply in the metaphysical. I'm agnostic when it comes to the metaphysical.
Okay. Chad Bird, where do warm waters halt in Red River, if you don't mind sharing?
Chad, I don't know. There's 2 locations, and if you look at the most recent version of the New Mexico Game and Fish regulations, you'll see around page 24, 25, the definition of warm waters. And then on that page, in the definition of warm waters, it refers you down below to what are referred to as the special trout waters. And there are 2 stretches of special trout waters around Red River, and warm waters halt. So in New Mexico, the rules are all waters are warm waters except those designated as special trout waters. So you have to look, they give very specifically where the state of New Mexico defines very specifically with geographic precision where warm waters turn into special trout waters. And let me give you an example, on the Cimarron, special trout waters begin at the east boundary of the Tolby campground, according to the state game and fish regulations. So warm waters end at where special trout waters begin, and they begin, that means warm waters end at the east boundary of the Tolby campground. So there's 2 of those, if I recall correctly, on Red River. There's 2 sections of special trout waters. So they end there. You're going to have to look them up. I don't have them handy. I know one of them was where the Red River, where the Goose Creek joins the Red River. The problem I had with it is if you go the canyon down, you end up very quickly in the town of Red River. So it's probably the other one that you'll have to look at.
Okay. Nikolai Strove, when do we simplify?
When do you simplify? After you've done what Fenn told you to do. Read the book, read the poem 10 or 12 times, read the book again. Then put it all down.
And simplify. Jazz Winners, my impression of watching him in the interview, he's going to stop spotlighting this hunt because he feels not to blame for the deaths, but just feels sad it happened and never expected that to happen. I
think, Chad, I've analyzed this over and over again, and I think there are several inflection points. I think the first inflection point was how badly the whole Today episode with Hens thing went for him. I think the second inflection point was the passing of Randy Beaulieu and how much attention that attracted. I think the third was the May 18th event of this year. And I think the fourth was the Paris Wallace loss this last summer. And I think the combination of those four things have driven Fenn to conclude that there's not anything more he can do and that he needs to step away from this. And I believe he mentioned, I can't remember exactly where, that he had been advised by his physician to get away from his email and to get away from the search and go on with his life.
Okay. How do you treat treasure if found? You're dealing with park rangers, land management, etc., i.e. the government, without this becoming a legal nightmare that might take years or decades.
So make sure you watch our video called What We Will Do When We Find the Treasure. We've already explained all that. Bottom line is you do what Fenn tells you to do, and that is tarry scant with marvel gaze. Get your ass out of there as quickly as you can. Don't tell anyone. Let someone know, while you retain your anonymity, that the treasure has been found, so nobody wastes a lot of time, money, and perhaps life and limb still looking for the treasure, and then dump the treasure as soon as you can. Our plan is to have it auctioned off. There is no requirement for you to tell anyone where the treasure was when you found it. That's the best advice anyone can give you. Don't tell anyone where you found it. You don't have to. It's not required. There's nothing anybody can do to force you to tell you where to do that. And I can assure you that if Fenn is still living and you indicate to him, even anonymously, that you don't care to disclose where the treasure was found, he will not either. He said he will abide by the desires of the person who finds the treasure. So you won't have all those problems as long as you tarry scant.
And let's see. Why do you think, this is Jazz Winners, why do you think he never included more of New Mexico? I think he was trying to narrow it down for people, because the wilderness is a vast place anyways, even if you just say the mountains north of Santa Fe.
You're dealing, if you say the mountains north of Santa Fe, someplace in the mountains north of Santa Fe leaves you with a search area of literally hundreds of thousands of acres. That's a pretty big search area. And what you have to work with is a poem that is very mystical, honestly, in the way that it provides you the clues. I don't think he had any plan that it would, you got to remember, the first edition of The Thrill of the Chase was 5,000 copies. He thought his impression was 5,000 people would buy the book in and around New Mexico. They would look for the treasure in New Mexico, and one of those 5,000 would one day stumble over it. And then the fit hit the shan with the Today Show. So you've still got, if you think about it, in the mountains north of New Mexico is a lot of territory to cover.
Mm-hmm. And Jimmy Fast agreed with you about Terry Scant with Marvel Gaze.
Yeah, get out of there.
Chest and go in peace.
Right.
And that's about it for today.
Yay.
We are out of time. We're out of questions. So we are ready to go home. Go home.
Go home.
Go to Denver. One of those.
Okay. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. That makes us look good in YouTube's eyes. Subscribe to our channel to receive notifications once YouTube gets its act together to receive notifications that there's a live stream activity. And check out our blog at www.gypsieskiss.com. I post there regularly with thoughts. And of course, this is all uploaded. When we upload this video there, we'll also add the chat to the video. And if there's any questions that didn't get answers today, I'll likely answer them on the YouTube channel in the section below this. Thumbs up, okay?
Yes.
That's all I got.
All right. And thank you so much for watching. And keep an eye out for anything we might send you from Denver this week. And we'll be back again next Tuesday, 1 o'clock MST. And thank you again for watching, and for Alan K for the super chat money that goes to the Denver trip birthday fund. Woohoo!
Yeah.
And thank you all. That's it, right?
That's it.
All right. Have a great week. And for Gypsy's Kiss the vlog, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week when we get back from Denver.
Bye-bye.